Hello class. In this video we are going to study about the introduction to the letter of 1 Corinthians. So let's begin. We are first going to talk about the uniqueness of the letter of Corinthians. I am going to outline three important uniqueness of the letter to Corinthians. Number one, the letter of 1st and 2nd Corinthians are the two of the longest letters written by Apostle Paul. Number two, they are two of the most important pastoral letters of Paul. Even though pastoral is traditionally given to the three letters of 1 Timothy, 2 Timothy and Titus, we see Paul's pastoral heart with the Corinthians struggling with many issues within the church. So rightfully we can say the letter of 1 Corinthians is indeed a pastoral letter by Paul. Uniqueness number three, they are two of the most practical letters written by Apostle Paul. These letters gives us an early look into the New Testament church, its structure, its methods and message. Though we know there were several problems in the church of Corinth. When we turn to Paul's letter to the Corinthians, we find a church with many problems. No church founded by Paul had more problems than one at Corinth. There is almost no modern day church problem that is not covered in 1 Corinthians. That is why the practical issues dealt in the letter of 1 Corinthians will help the modern churches to deal with their problems. So these are the three uniqueness of the letter of Corinthians. Now let's talk about the author. We know from 1 Corinthians chapter 1 verse 1 and 1 Corinthians chapter 16 verse 2 that Apostle Paul is confirmed as the author of this epistle. Now let's talk about the date and place of writing. The date of Paul's visit to Corinth was about AD 49 to 50. That means the date of Paul's letter would be then sometime in the mid-50s. That would be around AD 55 or 56. He wrote the letter of 1 Corinthians from Ephesus, where he ministered for 3 years. Friends, now let's talk about the recipients of the letter. The letter was written to the church of Corinth, made up of mostly Gentiles. The population of Corinth was racially and culturally mixed. The letter seems to reflect upon the several groups that were found inside the church. Number one, there were intellectual Greeks who were still very proud of their philosophical traditions. Number two, there were Roman patrons and the socially elite group that were also there in the church of Corinth. Number three, there were believing Jews also in the church, as we know that there was a synagogue in the city of Corinth. Number four, the large number of membership in the church of Corinth were converted slaves. The renowned Bible teacher David Parsons said, 1 Corinthians is like a sandwich with lots of filling. The two slices of bread are the Corinthians' problem concerning belief about the cross and the resurrection. The filling is the problem concerning their behavior. In other words, I can explain it in this way, that the top part of the sandwich is the cross or the discussion about the cross of Jesus, and the lower part of the bread of the sandwich can be understood as the resurrection of Jesus. So Paul stacks all the issues of the church between these two breads, that is the cross of Jesus and the resurrection of Jesus. And we can see Paul dealing with the problems of the church one by one in the middle of these two issues that Paul mentions in the beginning and at the later end of the letter. When considering the problems of the Corinthian church, it is important and helpful for us to distinguish between those that had been raised in the letter to Paul and to those that had picked up from verbal reports. In other words, anyone studying or reading the letter of Corinthians, we must be able to discern whether Paul is dealing with a reported problem mentioned by Chloe's household, or is he dealing with some certain doubts or questions which were raised by the Corinthian church in their letter written to Paul? Now I am going to share with you a small brief outline about the whole book of 1 Corinthians, and you can see what are the major divisions in the first letter of Corinthians. In the next class, we will be entering the book of Corinthians, and we will see chapter by chapter about the different things and our different themes that Paul is discussing in the letter to 1 Corinthians. Thank you. See you in the next class.